November 2007, Perugia, Italy. A 21-year-old British student, Meredith Kercher, is sexually assaulted and stabbed to death.
It's not ever going to be the same without Mez.
Could Meredith's own housemate, Amanda Knox, be one of those to blame for her brutal murder?
The motive wasn't there. The evidence that Amanda was in the room wasn't there.
It will take 4 years and 3 sensational trials to reach a dramatic conclusion. And in the end, was justice done? The city of Perugia lies in the beautiful Umbrian Hills, in the heart of Italy. It's famous for its historic buildings and its ancient university. For the parents of 21-year-old British student Meredith Kercher, it seemed the perfect place for their daughter to study abroad. Meredith embraces life in Italy.
I think Meredith really had a desire to live and gain knowledge.
She quickly makes friends, and in September 2007, decides to rent a cottage with 2 Italian students. 2 weeks later, Meredith and her housemates are joined by an American. Her name is Amanda Knox.
I think at the first they were bonded because of their language. She was quirky, free-spirited, from Seattle, which is a very alternative city.
To make her feel welcome, Meredith invites Amanda to join her and her friends when they go out.
They had a number of activities together, from visiting exhibition, going out at night, having a pizza together.
Then, a month after her arrival in Perugia, Amanda meets a 23-year-old Italian computer science student, Raffaele Sollecito.
He was a smart and shy student from a very good family. He had not had many serious girlfriends. Amanda, I think, was one of his first, and they seemed very much in that early stage of being lovebirds.
On Wednesday, October 31st, Meredith attends a Halloween party with friends. But according to Amanda, she texts Meredith that evening, suggesting they meet up. Meredith doesn't reply to Amanda's invitation. 24 hours later, she is brutally murdered. On the 2nd of November, Meredith's body is discovered by her housemate, Filomena, her boyfriend, and Amanda and Raffaele.
She had several large knife wounds in her neck. Her bra had been cut off and her t-shirt had been rolled up and she was partially nude.
For the Kercher family, news that their daughter has been murdered is devastating. For police in Perugia, the crime is unprecedented. There is intense pressure to solve the case as quickly as possible.
It made investigators immediately think, perhaps this is a break-in and sexual assault. But the more they investigated, the more they started to have doubts.
The police questioned Meredith's housemates about their whereabouts on the evening of the murder. All had stayed elsewhere that night and produced alibis. Amanda Knox tells police she spent the previous night of the 1st of November with her boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, at his apartment, a short walk from the cottage. She says that between 10 and 11 the next morning, she had returned to the cottage and had noticed a couple of strange things. The front door was open, while Meredith's bedroom door was shut. She claims to have seen blood on the floor in the bathroom and on the sink taps. Yet she went ahead and had a shower. She says that later, at Raffaele's apartment, she'd casually mentioned what she had seen. Together, they'd returned to the cottage where they discovered glass from a broken window on a pile of clothes in housemate Philomena's room. Amanda called Philomena, who headed back to the cottage, and then the police. Philomena's boyfriend had broken down Meredith's door and discovered her body. But the following day, back at the crime scene, police become suspicious. They can't help but notice the couple's odd behavior.
They found Amanda and Raffaele kissing and cuddling, and that continued at the police station as they were waiting for the questioning. They were kissing and making faces and didn't seem to be grieving.
Police questioned Raffaele Sollecito and then Amanda Knox throughout the night of the 5th and into the early hours of the 6th of November. They are particularly interested in Amanda's communications on the night of the murder with a Congolese man, Patrick Lumumba, the owner of a bar where she had been working part-time.
They'd seen text messages between her and Patrick Lumumba saying, "See you later."
For police, the texts raise suspicions further. Then, Amanda dramatically changes her story. In November 2007, police in Perugia, Italy questioned Amanda Knox for the murder of her roommate, Meredith Kircher. Knox had previously told police she had not been at the house at the time of the murder. Now she says she was. She even says she heard Meredith being attacked, and she names the assailant as Patrick Lumumba, though the circumstances of the statement are controversial.
At a certain point, and she claims it was after she'd been really intensely questioned and even cuffed on the back of the head, which police deny, she said, "It was him. I remember, it was him." The police officers describe her describing Lumumba, saying she had gone to the kitchen and put her hands on her ears like this to sort of block out Meredith's screams.
Police call in the prosecutor, and Amanda repeats her statement. By the next morning, police think they have a witness and a potential suspect.
About 9 a.m., she asked investigators for a piece of paper and a pen and wrote down the story again.
On the basis of this evidence, Amanda Knox, Raffaele Sollecito, and the bar owner, Patrick Lumumba, are arrested and held in custody. But 2 weeks later, a witness comes forward who proves that Patrick Lumumba was in his bar at the time of the murder. What's more, DNA from Meredith's body and the crime scene doesn't match Lumumba's. Instead, the DNA is traced to Rudy Guede, a 20-year-old petty criminal originally from the Ivory Coast.
They found his footprints, they had his palm print, they realized this was a guy they needed to talk to. They put out an Interpol alert for him and discovered that he had fled to Germany.
Authorities apprehend Guede and extradite him back to Italy. The police and prosecutor are left to question Amanda Knox's credibility, giving she'd implicated an innocent man. They now believe that the evidence points to Sollecito, Knox, and Guede all being involved in the murder of Meredith Kircher. And they discover Guede and Knox know each other.
They were not close friends, but they had had social encounters at a pub, at a party, at the downstairs flat.
The Italian prosecutor feels there is enough evidence to bring the three to trial. On the 20th of November, nearly 3 weeks after the murder, Rudy Guede admits to being in the house when Meredith was killed. He elects for a fast-track trial, and in October 2008 is tried in a closed court, attended by both Amanda and Raffaele. On the stand, Guede insists he didn't kill Meredith. Instead, he implicates an unidentified Italian man. But it's a story he will continue to change. On the basis of DNA linking him to the crime, Guede is found guilty of sexual assault and murder and sentenced to 30 years. Amanda and Raffaele had hoped his trial would exonerate them. But on the evidence put before them, the Italian courts have been convinced Guede acted with others. On January 16, 2009, after more than 14 months in jail, the pair is brought to trial in Perugia's historic courthouse. During the trial, the Kircher family is called to testify on behalf of Meredith.
It was heartbreaking to hear Arlene Kircher on the stand, and John Kircher.
Amanda has become a figure of obsession for the press. They dubbed her Foxy Noxy, which was actually a nickname from her childhood soccer-playing days, and cast her as a femme fatale. But as the trial rolls on, it's Amanda's testimony that falls under scrutiny.
Arriving in the police office, I didn't expect to be interrogated at all.
Standing trial in Italy for the murder of her roommate, Meredith Kircher, Amanda Knox's conflicting statements are under fire. The verbal statements she made to the police, that she'd been at the house on the fateful night, are deemed inadmissible in court because there wasn't an attorney present. It's also revealed that the interviews weren't taped.
Arriving in the police office, I didn't expect to be interrogated at all.
On the stand, Amanda now reverts to her original story, that she had been at her boyfriend, Raffaele's, all night, and together they'd discovered a break-in the next day. But the prosecution disputes this account, claiming they can prove the pair were involved in Meredith's murder. They tell the court what they think happened on the night of November 1st. Meredith Kircher shared a pizza at a friend's house before leaving for home just before 9 p.m.
We know that Meredith essentially went home to go to bed early.
The prosecution then claims that shortly after Meredith returned to the cottage, Amanda and Raffaele bumped into Rudy Guede nearby. It is suggested that Amanda let both men into the cottage. The prosecution then argues that Amanda, Raffaele, and Guede, high on drugs, found Meredith in her bedroom.
There was probably a sexual approach, initially not violent, by Rudy Guede, alone or with the others.
They say that next, the three tried to involve Meredith in a sexual game, which she rejected. And the prosecution alleges that injuries found on Meredith's body suggest events then took an even more sinister turn.
And then, I do think Rudy Guede, with the others, lost their heads, and they decided to go ahead and kill Meredith.
They then point to discrepancies in Amanda and Raffaele's alibis. They say the break-in had been fabricated and call a witness who claims to have seen Amanda and Raffaele near the cottage that night. Most importantly, they present evidence that places the pair at the crime scene with Gidey. They say a knife found in Raffaele's kitchen has Amanda's DNA on the handle and Meredith's DNA on the blade. Raffaele's DNA also shows up on a clasp found at the cottage, cut from Meredith's bra. To the jury, the evidence appears overwhelming.
Per quanto riguarda Amanda Knox.
On December 4th, 2009, after an epic 11-month trial, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito are found guilty of the murder of Meredith Kercher. Amanda is sentenced to 26 years in prison and Raffaele to 25. But back in the United States, public sentiment rallies behind Amanda, believing she is a victim of Italian injustice.
The family hired a U.S. attorney to aid the Italian defense attorneys. They also ramped up the media campaign to try to push and lobby for her innocence, that she was wrongly convicted.
How she is being portrayed and what she does is literally 180 degrees different than who we know our daughter to be.
The defense teams are convinced that Rudy Gidey was solely responsible for Meredith's death, and they are skeptical of the DNA evidence that places Amanda and Raffaele at the scene. They say forensic tests were inconclusive, and contamination may have occurred during analysis. After nearly a year of lobbying, the Italian authorities grant an appeal. Once again, Amanda and Raffaele will face the Italian court in what would be the fight for their lives. In November 2010, court proceedings begin, and Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito seek to overturn their murder convictions. The press is eager to see Amanda Knox again, now 23. This time, her appearance and attitude are totally different.
She was wearing very conservative clothing. She kept her head down. She only spoke and looked around when requested to by the judge. So it was a very different demeanor.
An independent team appointed by the court to review the forensic evidence are called to testify. Their findings are devastating to the prosecution.
So the motive wasn't there. The evidence that Amanda was in the room wasn't there.
They claim that Amanda's DNA could have easily been left on the knife handle while cooking at Raffaele's apartment. The only DNA linking Raffaele to the crime scene, found on Meredith's bra clasp, is also called into question. Video footage from the crime scene shows the clasp had been moved from its original location on the floor. It's also shown being repeatedly handled.
They came to the conclusion that the results were not reliable. Also, the risk of a contamination was very high.
The possibility of forensic errors redirects the focus from the circumstantial evidence, which proved so important in the pair's first trial. The defense counsel also raises doubts about the prosecution's theory of how Meredith was murdered.
It just didn't seem credible, this sex game gone wrong, the lack of motive, and perhaps questions about whether or not they really had the murder weapon.
In fluent Italian, Amanda makes a final emotional plea to the court.
Sto pagando con la mia vita per cose che non ho commesso.
On the night of October 3rd, 2011, after nearly 11 months in court, an international audience tunes in for one of the most hotly anticipated verdicts in criminal history. Meredith Kercher's family, who had to endure again the horrific details of their daughter's murder, waits in the packed courtroom.
Ordina l'immediata liberazione di Knox, Amanda Marie e sollecito Raffaele, se non detenuti per altra causa.
Amanda and Raffaele are acquitted.
Meredith's mother, Arlene, sister Stephanie, and brother Lyle were all in the courtroom when the verdict was read. And there was silence. They were still, just the sense of sort of, how could this have happened?
After nearly 4 years in prison, Raffaele Sollecito and Amanda Knox are trying to resume normal lives. Rudy Guede, whose sentence was reduced to 16 years on appeal in 2009, remains the only person still serving time for the murder of Meredith Kercher. But with the prosecutor and the Kercher family's legal team convinced that the full story is yet to be told, their fight for justice continues.
Really, for us, it feels very much almost like back to square one.
Under Italian law, the Kerchers' last chance to find out exactly what happened to Meredith is to take their case to the country's highest judicial level.
We have great faith in the Supreme Court in Rome for the final appeal of this trial, because we believe they can still say something important in this trial.